here. Okay, very good. How you doing this side room here? Okay, wired up the middle here. Okay, this is my side. This is my side. This is my section here. You're all right. There were times, I'm sure you know, when I bit off more than I could chew. But through it all, when there was doubt, I did love and spit it out. And I could more and did it
For those of you who didn't recognize the voice, that was Tony Clifton singing My Way. He did a good job. Tony couldn't be here today, so he sent in the song. My name is George Shapiro, and I've been Andy's manager and his friend for about 8.5 years. And over the last 10 days, since Andy died on May 10th, my heart has been aching. And in between the heartaches, I've been getting a feeling of remembering a lot of the joy and the love and the laughter and the excitement that he brought to my life. And I know that he affected a lot of people that way. Over the years, many people have asked me, how could you manage a guy like Andy Kaufman? I mean, he's weird. He's strange. And they say, why? How? How could you do it? Isn't it tough? Well, it hasn't been bland. One day he came over to me and said, George, I'm going to read The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald on Saturday Night Live on my next appearance. So I stared at him. I found myself staring at him a lot. And a lot of the times when he had these ideas, they seemed so crazy, and they turned out so innovative and memorable. And then one day he came over to me and he said, Tony Clifton has to have his own career, its own separate career. Do you know what a good manager? Do you know a good agent? Well, anyway, he had Jimmy the Sea look after him and Marty Klein, and he was very happy with those guys. He loved those guys. And then one day on Fridays, without telling anybody, except maybe the producer, he spontaneously walked off a show, a live telecast right in the middle of the sketch, and he made headlines across the country. And that's the call started coming in. Every time Andy was in the newspaper and there were headlines, everyone used to call me and say, is it a put-on or is it a reel? Well, this was a real put-on. And after that, if you remember, during the actors' strike a few years ago, Andy had a beard, about a 5-day growth, and he went on to the David Letterman show. Had a little bit of Vaseline over here. And he walked into the audience begging for change. He went in, you got a little change, you got a little change? He made $7. I waived commission. And then probably one of his greatest triumphs, he had a concert at Carnegie Hall. It was a sold-out concert with 2,800 people. And after the concert, he bussed the entire audience for cookies and milk to the New York School of Printing. He continued the show there with rock acts and magicians and mimes and wrestling until 2:30 in the morning. And then he made the announcement that the show would continue at 1 p.m. the next day at the Staten Island Ferry. And 300 people showed up, and he continued the show. And then he bought everybody ice cream, and he called that 24-hour period a day, one concert. And then recently, he filmed a movie in 4 hours at Sambo's. And it's the truth. It took him 4 hours. It came on the budget. It was scheduled for 5 hours. And, you know, that film was released and reviewed. It got wonderful reviews. It got a rave review in Variety. And anyway, when people ask me, how could I manage Andy Kaufman, well, let me tell you, it's been very exciting. He's been special. And his presence to me is so great. It's just very hard for me to accept that he's gone. When I saw the pictures in the papers and all the headlines, I just had an urge to call him up and say, Andy, you're all over the papers again. You have more headlines. And people did call, many people did call, asking if this was real or was a put-on. I wish it was a put-on this time. And these were some people were kind of sophisticated, and reporters asking if it was real or it was a put-on. And it's just that he touched us so much, and he was so enthusiastic. He couldn't wait to tell me his new ideas. We used to meet at the Cheesecake Factory for breakfast at 3 p.m. And he was late, and but he would come into the Cheesecake Factory with his eyes wide open. He would light up the whole place, and he was so enthusiastic and so happy. When I was with Andy, he just made me happy. I spent a lot of time with him on the road. I even had a good time with him in the Midwest. Anyway, he was a very sweet man and a very loving man, and I feel privileged that I was part of his life and he was part of my life. And his parents asked me to read a couple of letters that they received. This is from Judd Hirsch. Dear Stanley and Janice, nothing was more shocking to me than the sudden loss of Andy. He was my friend, and I am deeply hurt and angry. I truly appreciated your son. He was really good. I am glad I was there to meet and work with him. He was a definite and welcome part of my life. I am very sorry for your loss and for the world. With affection, Judd Hirsch. This is from Carol Kane. Dearest Stanley, Janice, Carol, and Michael, I wish you all such love and peace after so enormous a loss to your wonderful Andy. His spirit lives on in his formidable work. I will always be grateful to him for creating a land and people which gave me huge happiness in my life. My thoughts and sympathy are with you. Love, Carol Kane. Also, Andy's brother, Michael, asked me to deliver a message to the people that worked on Taxi. Michael spent considerable time down there when Andy was shooting the show. And he said he just wanted everyone to know how aware he was of the tremendous love and affection that was given to Andy by everyone that worked on Taxi. This is despite the fact that sometimes Andy pissed people off. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, he pissed me off plenty. I think almost everybody in his life that was close to him, I'm sure his girlfriend Lynn will go along with that. And Linda, everybody, he just pissed people off. But the wonderful thing is that despite this, the affection continued, the love continued, and that was really there in Taxi. And Michael just wanted everyone to know how aware he was of it, and he sends all of you his love and his appreciation. And I have one more message from Stanley Kaufman, Andy's father. He asked me to thank Bud Friedman for the tremendous contribution Bud had on his career and on his life. Bud flew Andy out here about 8.5 years ago to perform at the Improv, and that's when I first met him. And this was his room. Bud would allow Andy to do anything here. If Andy had a bit that took 2 hours, it was fine. He did it. And this was a place he could be creative and innovative. And it's real appropriate that we're giving him a tribute here. And one other thing, about 2 months ago, we had a West Coast premiere of Breakfast with Blassie. And it was tremendous. The audience reaction was great. Andy was high, and Bud invited him back here with his friends to celebrate upstairs in the restaurant. And Andy was so happy and so enthusiastic. And he said it was one of the greatest nights of his life. Now, bear in mind, this was 3 months after Andy learned he had cancer. And genuinely, we saw him, and he was like a little kid. And when he said it was one of the greatest nights of his life, he meant it. And that's a lesson I think all of us could learn from, his love of life. And we should never let that slip away from us. I think he'd love us to remember him that way. And now I'd like to call Bud Friedman up here to say a few words. Bud.
Thank you, George. I probably knew Andy longer than just about anybody in the room, except for Uncle Sam, but I was certainly the first person to be put on by Andy. In New York, he came in. He was recommended by a nightclub owner in Great Neck who called me up and he said, I got this kid that's very good. Put him on. And little did I know that I would be the one that was put on. But Andy came in and introduced himself as Andy Kaufman, and he was doing The Foreign Man. And he told me that he was from a little island in the Caspian Sea. And geography not being one of my strong points, okay, I'll have to look it up when I get home and find out exactly where it is and what they grow there. And he went on stage as the Foreign Man, and he probably did about 10 minutes of that, and it was cute and amusing, and I was laughing. And then he went into Elvis, and I said, boy, he really got that down good. And sings, it's easy to sing along. He's probably heard the records on his little island. Probably no electricity, but they cranked up the thing. And when he finished Elvis, he, of course, thank you very much. And at that point, I knew I had been had, and I just fell on the floor. It was wonderful, and
still following him to this day, I'm sure. Andy didn't even want you to know that this is one of his better put-ons, so just believe that.
Wendy, your career is not in trouble. That was great. That was great. When Sam Denoff comes up here, I think the mic is going to go up a little bit. The next person I'd like to bring up is Uncle Sam, Sam Denoff, and a person who I love very much.
Thank you, George. It's really not high enough, George. I am the infamous Uncle Sam. Not really a blood uncle, but Andy insisted on calling me uncle. I kept saying, don't call me uncle, because it makes me feel old. But the reason he did is because his family and my family, we come from the same block, the same street in Brooklyn, East 24th Street. His real uncle, Jack the Bullet Kaufman, is my oldest friend in the world. And so we've known each other at least all his life, all Andy's life, since he was born. It's funny, we moved away. We all got very Jewish and moved to Great Neck separately after World War II, and his family moved there. And we, of course, always kept in close contact. Andy, from the time he was a little kid, was a different kid. He really was, and we didn't see each other that much. His father was my brother's contemporary, and so occasionally the families would get together, and the kid was always a little different, and that was tough on his parents. I think one of the great joys was that in his later life, his parents really got to get the nachas about the wonderful success that Andy had. They still didn't understand him, but they accepted it. Which is I think what all of us are about, because I don't claim to really understand what Andy was about. George talked about pissing you off. One time, I guess it was 8 years ago, he did a concert in Town Hall. And that was when he was really working on Tony Clifton. And Tony, I remember Stanley and Janice and George and I and Jack the Bullet, we were all sitting there. And afterwards, instead of going out, we were going to have Chinese food on stage after the audience left. And he comes out, the first half of the show, he did his Tony Clifton, and he got everybody pissed off. And he had a fight with a girl, and the girl came up, and he slapped the girl, and the girl slapped him. And then, okay, now he finishes the concert, I should maybe preface it by saying that all through the years, he used to call me and say, Uncle Sam, what do you think about this? You think about this? Should I go with this? Should I do that? And, yeah, well, Andy, you know, you'll do what you want, but this is what I... Anyway, I go backstage because I really didn't really like the way Tony Clifton was in that thing, because I think it got to the point where it was a little dangerous for him. So we went in the dressing room, and there was the girl, the plant, who we had slapped around in the thing, and he said, well, how did you like the show, Uncle Sam? And I said, well, I think it was very good, Andy, and that's a very good idea. He says, that guy was terrible, wasn't he? And I said, what guy? And he said, you know, that guy Tony Clifton. He says, I'm not going to let him do my show anymore, and that's it. I said, Andy, Uncle Sam. You got it? And he says, no, I mean it. I'm not going to have him. I don't care what you... I was pissed off. The guy wouldn't back off. It was an amazing thing about him. He wouldn't back off from that posture, and he went for it. He was an amazing, sweet kid. Years ago, Bud, before he worked here, he used to call my office. My secretary, Audrey, used to get collect person-to-person calls from an apartment somewhere in New York, and it was Buffalo Bill calling Sam Denoff, or it was Colonel Jack Abrahams, or all these crazy names, which he immediately knew was Andy, which was a signal for me to call him back because he couldn't afford the phone call. So I used to get those messages, and he used to call. And then once he called and he said, I'm going to come out to California. I love Steve Allen, and you work for Steve Allen, and I do this act. What do you do, Andy? And he said, well, because I knew he had worked children's parties when he was a kid, and he did all that stuff, and I really didn't know what he did. So he came out and he said, can I stay with you? And I said, well, gee, I just had a second child, and I really don't have room, but maybe you can stay with Aunt Esther, which is my mother, who is my mother. He said, oh, good. So I called my mother and I said, Andy is coming out. She said, oh, good, because my mother and Grandma Lily, are still best friends. They still live near each other in Florida. So he arrived in California and went to stay with Aunt Esther. And, of course, the first night she called, she said, Sammy. What, Ma? She said, he goes in the room and closes the door. He won't eat unless he does that. Well, I said, he's meditating, isn't he? She says, yes, that's what he said. How long is he supposed to do this? I said, when he comes out of the room, that's when he'll eat. She says, he's so sweet. She said, but... So anyway, he upset my mother's routine, but she was great because she got into it too. She planned her meals so that Andy, after meditating, would come and eat. I remember one time in New York, we all went to Crisella's for dinner, and Andy went in the car to meditate. He was in Stanley's car while we ate, and then he came in and ate. But anyway, he said, you know, there's this place in Sunset Boulevard that I hear about called the Comedy Store. Anyway, he said, could I work there? And I said, gee, I don't know. What do you do, Andy? He said, well, I do things. I do Elvis Presley, and I do a character, and it's and you think you maybe could get me to go there? So I went down the hill, and I saw Sammy and Mitzi, and I said, look, I have this kid. He's my nephew, and I really don't know what he does. Can you put him on? And they said, well, you sure? I said, yeah, okay. Rudy DeLuca was the MC that night. They said, okay. So he said, oh, great. He said, you have a tuxedo. So I said, yeah, I have an old tuxedo. So he borrowed my old dinner jacket to do Elvis, and he borrowed another sport coat. He didn't have much of his stuff. He packed a bag full of stuff and props, and we went to the Comedy Store. And he was being fit in like at about 11:45. So I tell Rudy DeLuca, his name is Andy Kaufman, and he said, what does he do? The kid who was on goes on, finishes, and Rudy DeLuca says, and now a new young kid just in from New York, give him a great big hand, Andy Kaufman. And now Andy was backstage getting ready for, you know, the whole night, and he said, I'm not ready. What guts? I'm not ready. I mean, this was his first live appearance in this. I'm not ready. finally, and I swear I did not know what he did. And he came out and he started with the foreign man. And I said, oh boy. And he did about 15 minutes, and I got great hatred and hostility from the Shores, because they thought it was, you know, I didn't understand what the kid was doing. I thought there was, he started with the drumming and the whole business. He borrowed somebody's tom-tom. He went and he said, how did I do? How did I do? Was it great? And I said, well, I don't know, kid. I don't know. I never did know. I only know that he was so bright. He was so smart, because when it was a few years ago, George, he went down to my brother's house in Florida and he took some videotape equipment with him, remember? Yeah, sure. And what he did, he produced and directed with such marvelous intelligence and wit a little cinema verite thing of my mother and my brother and sister-in-law and his grandma Lily seated around a bad dinner table in West Palm Beach, Florida. You know what that's like. It's bad as the Midwest. And he directed them, and he produced a piece of real Americans talking and relating to each other. And he did it as a present for me. I think it was for one of my birthdays. And he had such incredible show business knowledge to be able to do that, totally out of the character that we knew as Andy Kaufman, that wide-eyed. Well, yeah, I remember one time he came to my daughter's birthday party and got into a fight with Pat McCormick on What's Funny, you know? Great joy is that he has all of you as friends. Has, not had, has.
These last couple of months showed such incredible love and affection for Andy, and it meant so much to him. Marilu?
Thing was that Andy, when he knew he was going to have to wrestle and play that character, the wrestler, he just did exactly what a wrestler would do. And it had nothing to do with who Andy was. And people don't get mad at Robert De Niro for doing his job, you know. So anyway, the last time I saw Andy was at the Breakfast with Blassie thing.
Deuce had the worst job in the world. She was Andy Kaufman's secretary for many years. I don't even want to hear the stories that she's going to come up with. Linda Mitchell. Would you come up, Linda?
I don't want to hear him either anymore. I'm so tired of him. I don't know what I'm going to say. I know that Andy's up there going, thank everybody for me, so my last official duty, you know, is, I guess I want to thank Dr. Rubens and Dr. Grossman. They were like, they tried to keep him out of pain and make him comfortable. And Lynn and I lived with Andy the first few months of his illness, and you know, we tried and searched and everything, and Andy was courageous and he was wonderful, and I used to those things, you know. As time. Thank you, Andy. I want to thank Andy, I mean, not for just a job, but a friend and for fun and all the experiences. I met some of my most favorite people in the world through Andy. I mean, I probably wouldn't have any friends at all or Andy. I don't know what my life would be like without Andy, but I want to thank him. You know, I think I did, but I want to do it again, so thank you, Andy. I'm sure he's here, and thank everybody for coming. I don't know what my life would be like without Andy, but I want to thank him. You know, I think I did, but I want to do it again, so thank you, Andy. I'm sure he's here.
Andy just got here. Sorry, didn't hear all those beautiful things you said.
Hello, me. I had to follow Andy a lot. It feels like there's now people going. I got to play Andy's grandmother once in Carnegie Hall. He didn't tell me he was going to give a woman a cardiac arrest and then bring her back to life, but little surprises he used to pull. I've seen him for years. I saw him at the end of the hospital. The most amazing thing you'd always remember is his eyes. His eyes are incredible. Even if he was in pain, his eyes are still going, he'll go away. And all of you, I know, think he's gone, and now I think he's back.
In this friendly, friendly world, with each day so full of joy, why should any heart be lonely? In this friendly, friendly world, with each night so full of dreams. Like brothers and sisters. So everybody turn to the person sitting next to you and say, "Hi, brother. Hi, sister." Very good. Very good. And now, everybody, put your arm around the person sitting next to you and sway back and forth in rhythm to the music. Okay, come on, everybody. Come on, you at home. Come on, even if you don't like the person sitting next to you. Okay, come on. And now everybody sing. The world is such a wonderful place. The world is such a wonderful place to wander through, Come on, you don't follow the bouncing ball. Everyone should be so thankful. Thankful for this friendly, friendly world. Thankful for this friendly, friendly world. Sing it again. Okay, one more time. We won't stop until everybody sings. Thank you very much and good night. Thank you.
That's it, and everybody, Andy's really lucky to have all of you here to say goodbye to him. He's a very lucky man, and I know he knows it.